Over the loss of Akira Toriyama really impacted the world last week, and when you live here in Japan for as long as that I have, what is it? I'm in my 26th year. Like, what was it about his stories that had that kind of an impact on people?
Yeah, there's just kind of a universality to them, especially Dragon Ball Z, which is about this, kid who just, continues to overcome so many obstacles to make himself stronger. Every time he gets knocked down, he gets back up again. And I think that's really appealing to a lot of people, especially young men around the planet. Um, but getting back to what you were saying about manga and anime, I honestly think that Japanese manga are like the jazz of Japan. Like jazz is a uniquely American art form that was created from a lot of different international influences and domestic influences. Manga is the same kind of thing. It was influenced by a lot of different things, Disney, American comics, all sorts of stuff, but it turned into this very uniquely Japanese form of expression. And Toriyama Akira was one of its greats. Like in jazz terms, he's like a Coltrane. He's like a Miles Davis. And losing him is just a huge, huge loss, not only for his fans, but for manga culture as a whole. His style is just ever present. And you can see echoes of it all over Japanese pop culture and global culture now, not just in manga, not just in anime, but in games and all sorts of places, which we can get into later.
Yeah, when you walk around Tokyo, you see sometimes people dressed up in the Dragon Ball as
Right.
as
Yes.
Goku. You see people wearing the wigs. You see people collecting
Yeah.
the figures. It was more than just anime manga to people. It became a part of who they were, and perhaps it was the storyline, the plot, the way these Japanese manga and anime, and I put them together. It is a different format,
Yeah.
different platforms, but I think it's just different than the way Americans have cartoons. The stories that came out of
Sure.
Japanese manga resonate stronger. I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is it about?
Yeah, well, you're not wrong at all to put anime and manga together because in Japan, the way things generally work is that artists create a manga, and then if that's popular enough, it gets turned into an anime. So you have this kind of proving ground for ideas, stories, characters that doesn't really exist as much in the States. Like, of course, we do have comic books and we have, cartoons or animation made from those comic books. But in Japan, it's like much more, it's systematized. And in particular, there is a publication called Shonen Jump, which is where all of Toriyama's work was published, all of his manga. And Shonen Jump really has this down to a science, which is why you have so many amazing hits coming from them, like Demon Slayer, like My Hero Academia. You've heard of some of these, Jujutsu Kaisen. Slam Dunk was in those pages, the basketball manga. So many hits came from them.
Mm.
And Akira Toriyama, that's where he learned his chops back in the 80s. So, Japan has this system for turning illustrated entertainment into really compelling culture all around the world. And Toriyama was at the top of that game. I mean, his stories are so universal, especially in Dragon Ball. As I was saying before, you have just this kid who is overcoming every obstacle thrown in his way to power himself up, to train, to become stronger so that he can succeed. And I think that's really appealing to a lot of people. I mean, it certainly is because we're seeing these celebrations of his life, especially in South America and places like Argentina, but not just there, all over the planet. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed. Like I've actually been in the editorial room of Shonen Jump. I was
Oh,
the
wow.
first journalist, the first reporter, the first YouTuber, first anybody from the outside to go in there because I used to work at Shueisha, which is where they published it. I was working for their magazines division, had nothing to do with anime manga. But when the anniversary of Shonen Jump came about, was it a couple of years ago? Maybe about 4 years ago. I get a chance to go inside and report on that for Only in Japan on my old channel, and that was a. I didn't real because I'm not a huge fan of anime manga. People here are like, "How could you live in Japan and not be such a big fan like that?" Right? But I think if I known more about it, I probably would have had more appreciation of being inside of there. But
Yeah,
it was
no, I
still
mean
a really good story.
that's not a place a lot of people get to see. And it's interesting that you got to see it because I think this is something a lot of people don't understand about how manga is made in Japan. Like they think of it as just an entirely artist driven medium. And it is. I mean, of course, you need an artist, you need a talented artist to make a good manga or an anime. But at Shonen Jump in particular, it's an editor's game. And the editors there really shape the content in a lot of ways. And in particular, Toriyama worked with a editor there named Kazuhiko Torishima. And it was Torishima who really gave him the advice that he needed to make not just Dragon Ball, but all of the stuff that he did with Jump a hit. And it's funny because when Toriyama first submitted a manga to Jump in like 1978 or 1979, it failed. It came in last on the readers polls. And like it's tough for us to believe this now because he's such a big name in manga and anime, but it's true. And but he wouldn't give up. He kept coming back and he did another manga and it did a little bit better. And then in 1980, he came up with one called Dr. Slump that was just a massive breakthrough in Japan. It isn't so known abroad. It's much more of a silly manga. It's almost like if you're familiar with America's Mad magazine, it's kind of like that, a lot of parody and a lot of, movie characters showing up in it. But that was huge. And then that led to Dragon Ball and the rest is history.
Yeah, look, can you talk a little bit about Dr. Slump? I know a lot of people know about the Dragon Ball Z because the characters,
Sure.
it's very for me. Dr. Slump was I didn't learn about that until I made that episode on Shonen Jump several years ago. So, like, I'm showing right now on the screen Goku with the Dr. Slump. Yeah,
Agare-chan, the
right.
little girl, right? Yeah,
Arale-chan,
like
right.
that's so Arare, which is already a joke, right? And it doesn't sound like it in English, but her name is Arare Norimaki, which is the name of a kind of rice cracker in Japanese. Like there he's using it as a name there. But anyway, Dr. Slump started in 1980 and it just became huge. It told the story of this kind of mad scientist guy named Dr. Slump. That was his nickname anyway. And he created all of these like wild inventions, one of which was this android girl named Arare. And this is another example of the editorial thing I'm talking about. Toriyama just envisioned her as kind of a one-off gag. She'd be in the first couple episodes and then break down or something and go away. And it was Torishima, his editor, was like, no, she's great. You got to make her the focus of this. And she became the focus of Dr. Slump, not Dr. Slump himself. That's what's
Wow.
kind of funny. It's called Dr. Slump, but it's all about Arare, this like cyborg little girl who's incredibly strong and like really kind of innocent. Like, and it's drawn in this really kind of cute kawaii style that you might call now chibi. It's kind of the roots of chibi design in a lot of ways. And it's cool and funny and kind of gross at times. Like one of the running gags in it is that Arare loves picking up poop on a stick and like running after other characters with it. And the
You
poop has
telling
like
me
a
that
little
the poop emoji came from this? Is that
yes, yes. So the poop here, I have a little picture of it here. So these scenes like this are constant in Dr. Slump. And you can see there's like a little face on there, like a little smiling, it's anthropomorphic, as we would say. Anyway, that was one of the dominant kind of jokes in manga in the 1980s. And so when emoji started to get developed, that was one of the first characters to get put into emoji. It's not like a direct take from Dr. Slump, but when I interviewed the emoji creators years back when I was writing about it, I was told over and over again, yeah, Dr. Slump, that was like a big influence on the design. So this is another way in which Toriyama's like kind of sensibilities have really filtered into, even if you're not an anime fan, even if you're not a manga fan, I bet you've used the poop emoji, right? And so that's like a little bit of Toriyama culture right there from Dr. Slump.
you?
It's in English now, so I really highly recommend reading it. Viz has put it out.
Oh, great! Yeah, I did use that poop emoji just yesterday to show my
There
son
you go.
Leo, and
There,
it's a lot of the things. In fact, emoji are Japanese, right? In fact,
yeah, the emoji are Japanese, and a huge percentage of them are actually inspired by manga, not manga characters, but like the tropes you use in manga, like the drip of sweat coming off your forehead when you're nervous, or like the snot bubble coming out of your nose when you're sleepy. You've probably seen these in like many, many manga and anime. And so the first emoji designers really borrowed heavily from manga, so that because they didn't have much room to work with. You got this like little, now they're like graphics, but back in time they were just tiny pixelated things.
Right.
So, and like that poop was instantly like one of the most, famous ones right off the bat. And when people saw emoji, they're like, why is there
Like what?
poop? Like Westerners just don't talk about it. They don't draw it. They don't think about it.
Well, it depends
And
how
so it
old
was
you
really,
are.
yeah, oh, yes, of course.
Where-
Yes. This is true. Yes.
How
That's
are you today?
definitely
I'm
true.
regular. It depends, on your age group here. But
Yes.
yeah, I remember seeing that emoji. I'm like, what the heck? Why would you put poop? On him? But now for me, living here in Japan, it's quite normal.
Yep. People use it all the time.
Which is why
I'm sure
Japan.
like the prime minister is probably using it.
Oh
It's like, it's not
yeah.
even, yeah. It's like,
When something's garbage, you just put the poop emoji as well. And in fact, a lot of the emoji you see are Japan based, including the food is like half
yeah.
Japanese, which people don't realize.
Yeah,
The bowl
yeah,
of
yeah. There's a
rice.
lot of Japan only ones, like the Tengu, the yokai known as the Tengu with the red nose. He's like called a demon in the English translation, but
Right.
he's not. He's a yokai. There's a lot of ones like that. But yeah, emoji are Japanese. And so Dr. Slump is a huge hit in Japan in early 80s, 80 to 83. It sells something like 35 million copies. It's turned into a huge hit anime. So Toriyama could have retired. He could have literally retired at age, he was about 30 years old back then. He could have
Right.
retired, left, but he didn't. He decided with Torishima, he decided that like Torishima said to him, "Hey, this is great, but maybe you should do a martial arts manga, huh?"
Mm.
And Toriyama loved martial arts movies, especially like Jackie Chan stuff, Bruce Lee, but really Jackie Chan. And so he came up with the idea of making this parody of the Chinese, very famous classic Chinese adventure story called Journey to the West. And Journey to the West is, I mean, it was written centuries ago. It's a classic of Chinese literature. It's China's gift to the world. And he borrowed the characters from that to make Dragon Ball. And that's where Dragon Ball comes from. It's kind of a
Oh
parody
wow.
of Journey to the West, set in this fantasy, modern style fantasy world, because the characters have all sorts of cool vehicles and stuff like that. And that turned into a big hit too. But before it did, this is a story not many people know. Torishima made Toriyama draw the intro, like what the first couple of
Oh.
pages of the first episode would be, hundreds of times, and kept rejecting them. Nope, not that. Go back. Nope, again, again, again. Torishima looked back in a memoir a couple of years ago and said, "Wow, it was 500 times I rejected his work." And then Toriyama said, "No, it was 1,000." He redrew the intro to Dragon Ball 1,000 times before he landed it, and it launched. But Torishima was right. His editor was right to put him through that. It kind of reminds me, if you've seen the movie Whiplash, where the teacher kind of tortures this kid to become the best jazz drummer that he possibly can. It's kind of like that, but it's funny because Toriyama was already a big name. He could have quit. He could have said, "Nope, I'm done. I sold 35 million." Anybody, you sell 1 million copies of something, most people are done. He sold 35. So Toriyama, but he went through this because he knew how, dedicated the Jump staff were to making quality stuff. He was dedicated to making another hit. And if Dr. Slump was a hit, like Dragon Ball was a supernova of a hit. Dr. Slump sold 35 million copies over its length of publication. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, all of that, it's like 350 million copies, 350 million. So it's like massive, massive, massive hit. And that's an interesting little backstory there that a lot of people don't know, that it wasn't like a genius. Toriyama is a genius, but he's also a hard worker.
Yeah.
And, he worked really, really hard. He had many failures, 1,000 failures before he came up with what his editors felt would be the winning formula for Dragon Ball. And they were right. It's probably the winningest formula ever out of Jump magazine.
Yeah, being in that editorial room and just spending time, I would just sit there and watch. It's pretty big. There's a lot of things going on to produce each one of those Shonen Jump uh, manga
Yeah.
magazines. It's pretty massive. There's so many different components and things going on. New artwork coming in, contacting with the artist. I mean,
Right.
it was really chaotic, like a newsroom. I guess you could compare
Yeah,
it. I don't know
right,
if you ever
right, right,
seen,
right.
All the President's Men, or what, some sort of the paper. Well, I don't know, any kind of a new
I can
Hollywood
imagine that.
movie. It's buzzing with life. But the thing that struck me was, unlike a newsroom, their love for what they did was so apparent on their desks, the editors' desks, everything around it, each cubby, just surrounded by figures, by
Right,
the
right, right,
world that
right,
they
right.
had created in this manga. And I'm not a huge fan, so I didn't really appreciate it. It's probably the same as you would have, but you can
Right.
definitely observe how much love there is for this. So for me, Toriyama continuing would have been, I don't think he could retire, because it's just part of his world, right? I
Right.
don't.
Yeah, well, no, he lived this. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And he was what you might call a fantasy smith. These are fantasies. They're not real, but the way that we as human beings grow is by imagining the path ahead. So we need fantasies to help us make new realities. So in a very real way, even though these are quote unquote just manga, just comic books, just characters, they're not real, they're for kids, whatever like critics want to say about them. These stories really inspired a lot of people. They inspired the people who go work for Jump. They inspired other creators. They inspired people all over the planet, as we're seeing. So it's a really massive kind of contribution to not only pop culture but human culture. I think you can say that Toriyama made. And
Yeah.
I'm so jealous of you that you made it into this Jump offices. Like not many people get to go see in there. That's amazing stuff. Look at you. Look at you. You're only
I'll
in
take you.
Japan. I
I'll
think that's
take you.
why.
Hey, I've been still in touch with them. I'll take you in next time.
No, we should totally go in there.
I
I'd love
promised.
to.
I promised Patrick Galbraith that I would take him as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's just all go in there. We'll go and
We absolutely
say hi to
absolutely
the
should.
team.
So let's talk about speaking of those offices. That's where another amazing thing happened. So somewhere in little early on in the Dragon Ball run, the Jump offices were contacted by a video game company called Squaresoft. I'm sorry, they were by a video game company called Enix. And Enix was making a role-playing game, a Famicom, a Nintendo role-playing game called Dragon Quest, and they needed somebody to design the characters for it. And the request came to Toriyama's editor, and he said, Toriyama, why don't you do these designs? And Toriyama designed the characters for a game series called Dragon Quest. And that made Dragon Quest just a massive, massive success. It was like a really well-made game. This is the 8th version, but I'm talking about the first, which came out in like around 87, I believe it was, 86, 87. Massive bestseller, made role-playing games a thing, not just for gamers, but for people all over Japan. Absolute phenomenon. And this is where Toriyama inspired me. Not only did I like his manga, but I like Dragon Quest a lot. And so my company later, many years later, we came to work on the Dragon Quest series. I actually did the English for 7, and this is 8. So my company helped localize these. And so I mean, I love this kind of stuff. This is the PlayStation 2. This is showing my age, PlayStation 2. But the Dragon Quest series is another way that Toriyama just really conquered the world, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you a gamer? Did you play any
I,
Dragon
I
Quest or
used,
anything like that?
I used to. Back before I came here to Japan, I of course played games in college, and every college student did. But
Right.
then when I came here, I was pretty much into work, and because you couldn't have an American game console, bring it to Japan and work with the Japanese games back then. They were region blocked. Do you remember? So I remember.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't even play the games, so I ended up stopping. I don't play games too much right now.
Yeah, I know. I don't have time. I wish I could. It's just I'm
Yeah.
just so busy with stuff. This is, it's funny. I always thought like, that when I grew up that you were always told that you would outgrow games, but I never outgrew games. I just don't have time for them. I know. Maybe that's what they meant by outgrowing it. I'll play a game any day of the week. I'll read a manga any day of the week. It's all good.
Hey,
it's all good.
After we did that episode with Wakaki-san up there looking at all the games from the 1980s, it started to bring back memories and making me want to pick up. You can get that Nintendo Switch and download apparently retro games. Like I was playing Matt Mania, this game I used to play in the arcade in the 80s on my Nintendo Switch. So maybe it's something to get back into it. Before we go, I wanted just to show here. I have it in the tree here. Hold on.
Oh, yes! Look at you. It's like a Christmas tree.
It's a tree that keeps on giving. This is
So
Matt
that's my
Alt's
book.
book here, Pure Invention. How Japan Made the Modern World. It's available wherever you buy your books.
Your
It's
books.
also on Audible, I believe. I saw
Yeah,
it
I
there.
read it. You can
You're
actually hear me reading it. It took me like something like 3 solid days to read the entire book out.
Oh, that's
It was
crazy. That's crazy. But
it was great.
I got a chance to go through it in particular for those that lived through the tech that went. It's an amazing
Right.
read. It's very nostalgic, and you're also working on a net series with this as well.
Yeah, we're trying to get a TV series of it off the ground. I'll keep you posted if and
Please.
when that happens. Been working on the proposals and the pitches and stuff. Because each chapter of that deals with like the Walkman, the Famicom,
Mhm.
like anime, manga, etc. The Tamagotchi. There's all sorts of great gadgets and products that Japan made in the post-war era, and I kind of investigated all of them. Check it out if you have a chance. I'd love for you to read it.
I'm gonna look at some of the questions that we might get in while we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. It's a Zoom call. If you have any questions, you can write them in the comments below, and I will ask Matt through this. But can you tell me, what did Toriyama mean to you? What did his work mean to you?
Dr. Slump was the first manga that I ever really fell in love with. Like, I just thought it was the greatest thing. It was silly, it was wacky, but it was cool at the same time. His draftsmanship, his drawing was amazing. So that was what really taught me that manga wasn't just like the potential of manga, I guess you could say. And it really made me want to read more, not just of him, but all manga.
Yeah, I'm looking here at the chat. Thank you for that. A lot of people say book looks amazing. Going to get it
Oh, thank you,
today.
people. Thank you.
Netflix has. Does Netflix have any of his work on right now?
Crunchyroll, I think, is the place where you go to watch that. But yeah, like Dragon Ball Z, Sandland is his new one. It's just such a shame. I'm so sad. I always just on a personal level, I wanted to meet him, but it's just, he had so much more in him. This wasn't somebody who had burned out. He wasn't like he hadn't lost any of it. He had his touch. But
Yeah.
it happens. Only the good die young. It's that kind of thing.
We also lost something that was really close to me. We lost the voice of Chibi Maruko-chan, which is on
Yes.
Fuji TV.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't know if
yes.
outside Japan you might not know this. This is also on Netflix. I learned Japanese through Chibi Maruko-chan and Sazai-san on Sunday on Fuji TV.
Huge,
It
huge
was huge,
manga
and apparently they have
anime.
her recordings until March 24th. She was sick, and it was somewhat expected, but it's still a huge loss. And
Yeah,
I'm hoping that they can find a way. It's going to be impossible to replace, but they got to keep that anime series going. It's
oh yeah,
for the way that it shows Japanese everyday life is just incredible through that format, and the stories that they tell do. It's very much like Ghibli in a way. They really, there's smaller
slice of
bites,
life.
right? Little slices of light in there, but not as deep as Ghibli. But certainly, it teaches you about Japan in a way
Oh, for sure,
that, like, just every episode is culturally impactful for what's going on in Japan at the moment. The
for sure,
holidays
for sure.
for school kids. And I didn't go to Japanese school, but I feel like I did because I watched Chibi Maruko-chan. So I
It is,
in
well,
a
it's kind
way,
of like a homestay.
it
It is like
is.
you're in a home. You're in a Japanese home.
It is. And
But
that
yeah, it's just anime. It's just another example of how powerful anime is as an art form.
Pomp Top Tiger writes in here, did you get a chance to meet Prince Akihito?
Did I get a chance to meet Prince Akihito?
I'm just
No. Did
going through.
you? I don't.
No,
I
I
don't
have
hang
not.
out with royalty.
I've seen him, but I have no, of course not. And what was your favorite Dragon Ball Dragon Quest game in
Oh, my
here?
favorite. Well, I mean, I'm partial to the one like eight. I love eight because we worked on it so closely. I've played it so many times. But they're all great. I mean, early on, I mean, I was one. I was obsessed with one, but I think three might be the actual best of the Famicom era.
And are you doing anything with NHK right now? What's going on?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I am no longer on Japanology Plus full time, but we just recorded a really awesome 20-year look back episode. So me, Peter Barracon, Emma, the narrator, and my replacement, whose name is escaping me, but is a really nice guy. We all were on camera kind of talking about our favorite episodes. That should be coming out really soon. So look for that. And then I'm going to be popping up here and there on various shows and things like that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, well, Tokyo Eye stopped about 2 years ago. Next week,
Yeah.
I think it was our last episode, and I don't do much for NHK because I got so many other things
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But I do miss working with the crew, the staff, the production team, the
Yeah,
producers, the
they're
directors.
great.
There's so much going behind the scenes when you watch an NHK or any kind of TV show. I learned quite a bit about my YouTube series through working with Tokyo
Oh
Eye,
man, they're
and
just great people.
yeah. Same with Japanology. They asked me to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like a guest reporter
Yeah.
in the past,
You,
but I never. I don't wanted.
you were gonna
I mean, but
replace me, man.
hey, but we've
You
done.
would be a great
I know,
replacement.
yeah. But I did work with you on Tokyo Eye a couple of
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least
yeah, yeah.
yeah 2 episodes, and I think the DIY robot episode where you made something that was
Yes.
like 10 years ago. But I
Yeah, the
remember.
robot episode with Meiwa Denki. That was a really cool
Yeah.
one.
That was really cool. So that's how I know Matt from way back from Tokyo Eye and working with NHK. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. No, it's a small world after all.
absolutely. It's really nice to see you again, Matt. Everybody, his book is called Pure Invention: How Japan Made the Modern World. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time today and sharing your thoughts on the passing of Toriyama Akira recently.
Yes.
We will see you again soon on the show.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. And Matt has less than a minute. That's why I had to end the meeting. All right, it's just me right now. I want to say thanks to everybody who for watching this live stream on. I as someone who doesn't watch a lot of anime or read a lot of manga, it's hard for me to understand when something like this hits with the news. A passing of anybody of such cultural significance is a big deal. Somebody who's contributed it so much to Japanese subculture. But from the stories that he did tell, from the ones that I did read, they really reverberated with people. And I think that the characters, the storylines, and the way that the lessons that you learned through Dragon Ball Z were things that parents could teach to kids. You could learn through this. And I think that anime and manga is an amazing format. Matt's here. Hey, Matt, I'm actually still on live right now. But yeah, I'm holding you up to the speaker right now. I'm just kind of ending it here, but
Okay. Well, tell everybody I said bye.
oh yeah, Matt says bye, everybody. I'll give you a ring in about a minute, okay?
Yeah, okay, sorry, man.
All right, no worries. That's funny. But the reason why I wanted to do this is because I don't do a lot of things on anime manga, but it is something that is for a lot of you. I got to hear feedback from hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 people on all the social media saying, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this? What just happened? How do you feel?" I I I felt really devastated when I heard the news because I know how important it is to all of you. And for me, now I'm starting to learn more about his work. And this is the sad thing about it. You really don't, when somebody passes, you hear the news and then you start to get in touch with it. And now, I'm more in touch with what Dragon Ball Z is and what it means to a lot of you. And if you don't know much about anime manga, but you are deeply interested in Japan, you can't really. It's hard to separate the two because it's such an integral part of everyday culture here. You people grow up reading and watching anime and manga now. It's part of the lessons that kids learn in there are important life lessons as well. And he will be sorely missed, as well as the passing of the voice artist for Mariko-chan. And we've lost a lot of really great artists. Again, these are people that came up through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now that's already 45 years ago, which is crazy to think. But this series, Shonen Jump, continues to go on quite strong with new ideas because the team there has a really strong passion for what they do. And you're going to continue to see innovative stories from amazing artists like Toriyama Akira. And I want to say thank you to everybody who asked me to do this episode. Rest in peace, and we'll have Matt on the show again to talk more about not just the work of what Toriyama-san did, but more on the significance of Japanese subculture. And Matt knows quite a lot about Japan in a different way that I do, whereas I know a lot about the traveling, the locations, the attractions. I've been to every single prefecture like a gazillion times, and lived in 16 or 17 different cities over the course of my 20 some years here, every region of Japan. So I know like that side of it, the historical side. Matt knows so much of the subculture, but we kind of meet in the middle where he knows a lot of that history too. So it'd be really great to work with Matt in the future again. And I want to thank everybody for encouraging me to do that as well. Well, that's all that I have here. If you have a comment or you want to share a story that impacted you, please leave it down in the comments below. I love to